So this is my desert rose that I've been needing to repot for a while. Normally I wouldn't do it in the growing season, but I did forget to repot him this year, and I should have done it earlier in the year. You can see he's not very happy because he's got a few yellow leaves at the bottom, so I am going to repot him. I'm going to show you how I do it. It's so simple, nothing to be afraid of. Loads of people get really nervous about repotting bonsais, desert roses. They leave them in the pots too long. Mine was just I was too busy. So here we go. Desert roses need to be repotted into some really good draining compost because they absolutely hate sitting in water. They like the water to go into the pot, they like to drink it, then they want the roots to go dry, and before they dry out properly, then they want another drink. The average rule of thumb for the UK is about watering every 3 days. I tend to water them as soon as I think they've dried out. So here he is. This is his original pot. I actually grew him in from seed. In here I've got my compost mix. It's a normal compost. I think it's it's just a basic compost with a lot of fine grit in it, and then I've added some coarser sand to it, so it's actually really well draining now. There it is. Fill your pot and make sure your pot's wet through, but you shouldn't have any water logged in it. All the water should have drained out before we repot. Some people also add perlite. That holds some dampness in the soil for your plant, but it doesn't keep it soggy unless you add too much, of course. So that can also be a good thing to add, but today I'm using sand and compost. Seems to work well for me. So I'm going to lift him out the pot, show you what his roots look like, then I'm going to wash off the roots and repot him. I'll also show you what the soil looks like before I put him in, so you get the right moisture in the soil. In the sink I have my soil mixture. I've watered it thoroughly through and the water is dripping out the bottom. That's just how I want it. I don't want any extra water in there. You can see the top is really wet. I also haven't filled it to the top because I want some space to put more soil over the top and hold him in place. So just need a little dip when he goes back in. On the other side here I have my little tree. Just give you a close up. Now that big green bit at the bottom is the tap root. There we go, and you can see he was in need of repotting. So I'm going to get all this loose fine hairs soil free. What you can do is actually use a little bit of water to help loosen the soil out, because it was a gritty moisture. It comes away really nice and easily. Now the other tip, and you really should be doing this not in growing season, but this guy, he really needed a repot. The other thing you can do is just give the roots a very fine trim. If you're used to doing that with bonsai and things, it won't be anything scary, but if you're not, it can sound really scary. So I'm just going to show you how I'm just going to trim the ends. I'm not going to do anything too extensive. They only need a fine little clip, and what that does is it encourages this big bulbous bit to get fatter here, which is what's sought after in most desert roses. Another little tip for desert roses is if you grow them from cutting, they don't always develop this bulbous bit. Sometimes they do, but not always. This is a good sign it's been grown from seed. I actually grew this one myself last year. He's a year old. And he's being now fed up on fertiliser to hopefully get a flower this autumn. So we're going to repot him. Hopefully that'll help. Did get a little bit of neglected at the beginning of the year when he should have been repotted, but we're sorting that out now. I'm just going to pause the video and then I'll show you me cutting those ends of the roots off. Now, this is a bit tricky because I have to hold the camera and show you me cutting the roots, so bear with me. I'm not going to do anything too extensive here. I'm just going to take the ends off to stimulate a little bit of new growth. Just going to snip the ends. On the other desert rose that's the same, planted at the same time, this big thick taproot here actually went to the end and the finer hairs were off it, so I was actually able to take a little bit of the taproot off. But this one, he's grown very differently. The taproot has grown first and then the little hair roots off the end. So all we're going to do is take the tiniest bit off those hair roots, and that's all I'm going to do this year. One important thing to remember is when you are trimming the roots in any way on any sort of plant, Do not fertilise them after you've repotted them. The fertiliser will burn and kill the roots and do serious damage to your plant. You need to wait about 4 weeks before you can re-fertilise them again to let those roots heal from the cutting. So even if you've just done a little bit like this, don't attempt it. After 4 weeks, you're safe to feed again. During the growing season, spring to autumn, desert roses should be fertilised really regularly, every 2 to 3 weeks, because they like to flower at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. And without a good fertiliser, it's unlikely you'll get them to flower. So I'm going to repot this guy and I'll show you the end results. Another one I did about 2 weeks ago, so in 2 weeks he's going to be fed. You can see he's in nice and firm there. You can see the soil's not too wet. It's damp to the touch, but it's not soggy, and that's just how they like it. Got some nice new growth at the top there. And that's how simple it is to repot them.